learn the business of your craft. I think that's why we say like Michael Jordan is one of the greats, Kobe Bryant's one of the greats, LeBron James one of the greats. I don't think we include that characteristic of genius to them, and they have it. It's like, what is it about them?
Fate of the universe on the line, or the Martians have the death beam pointed at Earth. You better hit it. I want Iguodala.
Four-time NBA champion.
And author of a new book called The Sixth Man.
Iguodala has become a household name in Silicon Valley, and he's invested in over 55 companies.
He has also started a podcast with his great friend Evan Turner called Point Forward.
You know you have a talent, and you extract every ounce of talent out of yourself. Fame is inevitable, and I've learned the evils of fame.
Welcome to the Eat, Play, Crush podcast. I am your host, Mary Shenouda.
Which is
talking about your quality and standard.
Yeah, which is stickiness. You stick when you can have like longevity, when you can come back in like 10, 20 years and the same principles still apply.
Right. What are you reading this morning?
I saw WWE just signed a big deal with Netflix. $5 billion. Netflix's first sports investment, I would say. I mean, they did something with Netflix and golf. That was a one-off, but it's big. It's like a 10-year thing. Is it a 10-year thing? Yeah, that was big. It's really big. I pay attention to stuff like that. I had a bunch of emails I had to catch up on. I read a couple contracts.
That's all this morning.
Yeah.
You tap in, like you have the things that you like to read every morning, right? You listen to certain stations.
Oh, yes. So there's a podcast I listen to. I try to listen to religiously just to keep me in line on the tech side in terms of like what I need to know. But it's so funny where tech and politics are starting to merge into one place. And it's so funny how the perception and the reception is behind that, as opposed to as an athlete, we were told to shut up and dribble. Right? So I laugh at that. But it's like half the population on Earth right now, or this year, will go through an election phase for like the first time in maybe in human history, just based on the way we're set up, democracies here, dictatorships, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
Like the first time ever. That's 4 billion people are going through an election.
And we're going to trust them all with our future.
Well, we have an issue with the deep fake with Biden and the message that went out there. I saw that this morning. But the S&P's at all-time high. I was watching Bloomberg and CNBC. And my brothers, I got my close friends around me to start paying attention to certain things. And I'm doing it for their benefit, but I don't think they understand that they also help me, because now they start feeding me information.
Yeah.
Because now they're into it.
Yeah.
And so I don't think people understand like the long-term effects. And so when you put out good, and I think that is how it comes back in ways you never would have thought of. And so like it's so funny how he threw the S&P was at all-time high this morning at me, and then it led to another conversation.
Yeah. But you're like that. You're strategic. Like I would joke with you. I go, you mess around too much, but you're always paying attention. But you also mess around too much, and if someone's not paying attention, they don't see what you're actually accomplishing in the room. I love it. And it's something I try to learn from. But to your point of like, they tell athletes to just shut up and dribble. So you have, your resume is ridiculous.
I don't have a resume.
For anybody who doesn't know who you are, ignorance.
Regular person.
Andre, 4-time NBA champ. Thank you for letting me be part of one of them.
There's a lot of those.
Whew. Finals MVP. 2-time Olympic gold.
There's a lot of those.
Author.
There's a lot of those.
Co-host of your own podcast show.
There's a whole lot of those now.
Early investor. Your investments span, last time I checked, over 25 companies.
It's like triple that. But
triple that. Facebook, Twitter, Tesla, Zoom.
There aren't enough of those.
Come on.
There aren't enough of those.
Co-owner of Footy team in Leeds. You invested in the soccer team in San Francisco.
Yes, the women's soccer team.
You sit on the board of many different companies, and right now you're the executive director of the NBPA. What? Is that enough?
Is it enough for?
The answer is no. But all that to say, like, say I just met you at the airport and I ask you, what do you do? What would you say today?
I always say it's complicated. I was recording yesterday and I didn't have a USB-C port charger. I needed it for my receiver and the microphone. And I had to run down the street to CVS and grab it. And I was rushing in, and I'm kind of buttoned up, so I'm rushing out. I'm paying for it. And lady's like, "Wait, what do you do for a living?" And I was like, "It's complicated." She was like, "What does that mean?" And I said, "Well, I'm an investor, early stage investor. So I'm a venture capitalist, and I run an athlete agency, which is I don't like using the term union. So I said I run an athlete agency. I'm a CEO."
Yeah.
She was like, "Oh, it's interesting." And then I ran out. I had to like run down the street, and it was kind of raining too.
Yeah. And I've admired you as a player for a very long time. And how we met was through Ben Bruno sent you my way on social media.
Yes.
And the day I saw the follow on social media, I was like, what are the odds that one of my favorite players is like following my work? And if you told me that from following you as a player would end up leading to being able to facilitate extending the career, helping support the career that one more year for that championship, endless thank yous for that. But I admired you as a player because, again, if somebody's paying attention to you, you're not just an athlete. It's the way you would think as an athlete that always stood out to me. And I was in tech early. I started in tech in 2006, dropped out of high school, went straight into tech. And 2010, 11, I'm hearing your name in Silicon Valley, unrelated to sports. It was just always so fascinating to me the way you make decisions, and you've been able to be very strategic in that way. And then when I read your book, it made sense for me. What stood out in the book, aside from your upbringing, but also the type of mom you had and the way she raised you, and the joke of like you'd be reading the newspaper every day as a kid. But what stood out to me is your grandmother's work with foster care. And I would assume that being in an environment like that helped you learn a lot about interpersonal skills, compassion, and the power of observation.
Right.
And how much would you attach that to the way that you've made decisions, both in sports, outside of sports, and how you build, I don't want to say teams, but build your reality around yourself?
That's all interesting, especially on the, just growing up around my grandmother, spending a lot of time around the structure where we all resided, and the compassion thing came like much later. Like
We're still working on that.
No, the compassion from that perspective,
Sure.
and from the background that a lot of these children come from, like it hit home as soon as I left high school. Or probably a little bit before that. In high school, I kind of had some compassion. But when you're a kid, like kids are awful.
Yeah.
So you don't know it in the moment. But as I got older, it all started to make sense. And that was through like mistakes and like, just being mean sometimes. I was able to take a step back and be like, all right, I don't want to conduct myself in that way. Like
did you pick up on it in the moment, or someone like your mom say like, don't be mean, or did you say something, do something, see the reaction, and then be like, oh, dang?
As I got older, it was like self-correction.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, like my grandmother would say something, and we're just kids. Or that other person, the child or the teenager, whatever age it was, would speak to how they felt. And I was like, okay, I feel that. I feel that. And so that's good to have. And then speaking to that, just saw something on, you can see someone who's successful and you can go back and quantify the traumas and certain things that they went through as a kid. And the right amount that's, they don't develop coping mechanisms in terms of like drugs or certain things. They just, they continue to, their outlet is their passion, which in turn builds preservation, which is Grit, the book Grit. And when I'm thinking about this, I'm like, whoa, like I was able to see a lot. I was able to identify like, I was able to identify that I was different and that I had blessings. But at the same time, I was always trying to prove myself, especially in the environment that I grew up in. Like I grew up amongst people that had real life struggles. And I didn't quite have those struggles just because of my mother and the principles that she built our foundation on. But I was, I'm not far removed from them. Like I'm a week or two away from being in the same position that they are. But in terms of like how my mindset was built and the foundation that I was given, I was always my thought process was a lot different than theirs.
Right.
Like we kind of came from the same social economical background, like the same exact thing.
Right.
Like we struggled. Like I was just thinking of, childhood trauma to having my mom in her car when I was very young. Like I was young. Like those are one of the few things I remember living in that house. It was only like 3 or 4 things, but that was one of them. And I saw somebody run through my backyard, my aunt's backyard, who had a gun. We're in like the makeshift swimming pool, like $30 inflatable swimming pool. And this guy runs through the backyard and it's like a shootout. And we're like, what the hell's going on? But we just laughing and keep going. And then finally it's like, get your asses in the house. And then lo and behold, like literally 20 steps away, somebody's brains just got blown out, right? Like I didn't see that visually. And so it was like, it was so close to me.
Right.
But it was just interesting how I was blessed with the figures that were around me that kept me from actually seeing it.
Right.
So those type of traumas never got through.
Landed directly.
Yeah. There were always
in
filters.
the peripheral. Yeah, the peripheral.
Right,
like,
but I was aware of, okay, I know what's around me, but I know I'm different. And I'm just going to I want to do something great.
mm-hmm.
But then along the way, I had like dope figures of, a certain ethnicity tell me that I wasn't going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things combined,
right.
And now I just will never stop working, I guess.
What were you trying to prove?
I had a few figures that were like older than me that I looked up to, like athletes, just in the city. And we always had really good talent, but the stigma behind it was they never get outside of, the bubble that we live in. Like there's a small town mindset that a lot of us can grow up in.
Right.
Like, there's like those, anywhere it's 90,000 people and smaller. And you build that small town mindset where you're afraid to go out and you're afraid to fail, essentially. So you're just comfortable in your city, or you're big fish in a small sea.
Mm-hmm.
But what your stature making you a big fish,
mm-hmm.
but your stature only lasting you, it's like the Al Bundy syndrome, I call it. The stature was only lasting 2 or 3 years. It's,
mm-hmm.
Maybe sophomore, junior, senior year of high school. Like I'm reading the paper every day, you on the front page of the paper, or, you get a lot of that social interactions from others, and that kind of builds up, however you want to view yourself in the eyes of others.
Mm-hmm.
This is very short-lived.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I always wanted to be the one that was like, listen, I'm gonna make it.
Mm-hmm.
And making it to me then was just getting out.
And for you, what was it, basketball? Like, obviously you probably recognized your talents in basketball early, but did you also know you were different in other ways?
I knew I had a brain.
Did you see a vision for utilizing that brain at that time, or was it just one step at a time?
I didn't know how I could use my brain, but I knew that my brain wasn't going to hold me back, because that is usually the case where you got the athletic skill set, but
mm-hmm.
you can't pass the test.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't get to college, or you get to college and you're back home within a semester.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to hear all those horror stories. It's just like an athlete, professional athlete who makes millions of dollars and they go broke, although they've heard all the
mm-hmm.
the horror stories behind that. So I went through that process too. And so I guess it started there in high school, where it's like, all right, I'm getting out. And I knew best thing for me was just go as far away from home as possible.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't come back.
Right. There's a saying, one of my soccer players, his mom made this comment of, I know if I did a good job raising you, if you don't want to stay home. A good mother sends her kids away and doesn't want them to come back. And it's sort of this like, it hurts because I'm sending my baby into the world. But if I did that, I did a good job raising them, type of thing.
That's the scariest thing as a parent. The kids that get stuck at home.
You knew you had a brain. When did you pick up on your emotional intelligence?
That was much later. I was immature. I was like earlier you said, I play a lot.
Yeah.
It's a coping mechanism to kind of like joke.
Yeah.
It's like a shield you put up a little bit.
Yeah,
but
which makes sense. Like anyone in your position has a lot of walls and boundaries set up. I'd assume you don't really know who to trust around you, or what rooms you're walking into. What's the expectation? What are the assumptions being made? I can't speak to it from an athlete, but I can speak to it as a female person of color.
Right. And for me, I've had to adjust. Like now I'm in this weird adjustment phase where I have to be like serious, and I have to be careful of, or mindful of so many things, like where I'm at, like who's around me, the circles that I'm in, I'm like on it's like a paranoia where I'm always watching, like, who's watching me? Like, I know somebody's watching me because I think my intentions are so pure, and I do have very lofty goals that can be very disruptive. And from our community, when you're disruptive in certain manners, you should
They're like,
be,
see, we
no,
told you.
you should be afraid.
Yeah.
If you go back through history,
Yeah.
I think I had a meeting, and I got too in depth about it, and I wasn't trying to compare myself. So we just had MLK Day, but why should I have to be cautious of speaking to, that's the goal for me, is to have the impact like that. So I feel like I have to be calculated now in a manner that's not natural to me. So that's like a hard thing. It's like, yes, I'm playful, but I can't be playful anymore in the rooms that I walk. No, when I'm going to my rooms, I'm serious, but you can't let your guard down ever.
You have to adapt in the moment. It's no different than situational awareness on the court or any
Correct.
sport.
But once the game's over, the game's over.
Right.
But in the world I'm in now, it's like, I didn't realize that I saw my acupuncturist last week. I saw Sarah. Sarah brings me back to life.
Yeah. She's magic.
And Sarah's like, I need you on these nutrients because
you're not eating Mary's food anymore.
I'm constantly on.
Yeah.
She was like, can you give me 2 hours a day where you're not on? And I'm like, well, what does that mean? She was like, not on your phone. I'm like, I don't look at my phone anyway because I'm so busy. And then I'll take like 2 hours into my day to catch up on emails.
Right.
Like, I'm trying to explain that to a few of my friends. And it's like, you're not as engaging. I'm like, no, I literally don't have time.
Right.
And I know I don't have time when I can't check text or I can't check emails, because I know emails are very important. So I try to respond to all my emails, but I'm just on from the time I wake up. Like, I got a new routine. Try to wake up first thing in the morning, workout, and then, straight to work. And then,
what's your workout like? Because it's different now.
Less of a load now.
Yeah.
So I'm a bike guy, where I'll get on a bike and get to riding.
Are you multitasking on the bike?
I can't multitask when I'm working out.
I'm actually grateful for that, to hear that. I was
figure that
really
out.
worried.
Okay.
No, don't figure that out. Please give yourself a break.
Because somebody said, why can't you do podcasts while you lift weights? And I said, I can't retain the information because I'm focused on whatever I'm doing, which is, I watched The Last Dance randomly the other day. Like, just randomly, I'll turn it on. And they said Michael Jordan's secret was he could live in the moment. Like, he was as present. He was the most present person that you would find in an athlete, because you're either looking to the future or you're looking behind you in the past. And like, you can't just like focus on the now. And that's something he did very well. And that's why he always had the moments he had, and those moments that he had. He always came through when he needed to come through because he was present.
Right.
And so I can't multitask when I'm working out. And so once I'm there, like, probably once it hits like 8:30-ish, I'm on until 10 p.m.
So your morning is working out, and then you just jump into it?
Well, yeah, I mean,
you spend some time reading, right?
Well, I consider work reading. And so
what are you reading for
there's no
pleasure?
such thing as leisure or pleasure. There's no pleasure.
But you're a person of faith. You get your scriptures.
So I'm audio. And so I'm going through the Bible in a year. So I'm in Genesis chapter 30. I'm like 4 days behind, I'll be honest. I'm on Genesis 30, chapter 37. Joseph and his brothers, he's meeting them back as he's the king of Egypt after they threw him away. And they found him as he was an adult. Yeah, so I do the audio. So when I first wake up, I have my morning routine, which is like prayer, stretching, first two things. Then as I brush my teeth, and as I get ready to go work out, I do the audio, and I'm like intentionally listening.
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
Yeah.
And then I work out. Then the day starts.
So everything I mentioned, as far as the fund, sitting on the board, you just got in a day ago, and the meetings you just had yesterday would make an average person exhausted. They would need a week to go through what you went through. How are you building a team to support this new life? Because also you were doing this while you were playing too. Like, what?
Well, I'm not playing. So I had a cheat code. I always had, it's just funny I'm saying this, I always had the game as my safeguard.
Right.
So I could always use the game as an excuse. Like, I got to get back to you. I got a game today. I got treatment. Like, I could cancel.
Right.
Like I can push it back, and I can leverage being a basketball player as to like, I'll fit you in when I can fit you in.
I try to tell people this, like when I'm working with athletes, in season is the most structured, calm time. Even though it seems crazy on the outside, I'm like, no, because you know what to expect, when to expect. There's a routine. And then I get worried for off season because that's when my calendar will get overloaded. People, you got to do this, you got to show up here. I'm like, oh man.
Off seasons are always brutal.
Right.
But now it's the team that you put in place is, you know, can make or break you. And I think athletes are starting to learn that while they're playing too. It's like, you know, I have someone in place who handles specifically this. You know, I have someone who helps him with the family. You know, I have someone who helps you directly on the tech side. And obviously, you know, being an executive director, you know, you have a chief of staff is really important. The executive assistant there is very important. And I'm gaining confidence because I feel as if I'm succeeding, and success is whatever you call it. I feel like I'm accomplishing, like I'm getting to where I need to get through. You know, I'm getting through the day. I'm not leaving anything behind, and I'm only operating at like a lower level of efficiency that I feel I should be. Like I have like there's a lot more layers I can get to. Like if this was a video game, I'm on like level like 3, and I should be finally onboarding a few positions by the next week or so. And once I get that in place, I can't wait because I'm ready to just take off because I've been shuffling crazy, but getting pieces in place to get the structure right. And then once I do that, now I'm off and running.
Tactically, how do you select who is going to be supporting you? Because you expect the best and precision. And I understood that. That's why I showed up for my role with you with precision. But I'm struggling with building a team because I give the benefit of the doubt. I see somebody for their potential. I'm like, you know what? I would show up to a role not fully qualified, but I figure it out. So I think everyone else around me can do that too. But what are the traits when you're hiring someone or working with someone that are the non-negotiables?
I need to communicate to them exactly what I'm looking for. And I've learned being as honest as possible is best for all parties. I was at a dinner meeting or lunch meeting, and a guy mentioned something that like it's sticking with me. Like, you know, you take things from all universities that you're in. This one I'm still in. So he said, anyone working with you should never be surprised if you have to fire them. They should know they're going to get fired. Because if you are in constant communication or they understand exactly what's needed, the KPIs are put in place, the tasks that they know they're supposed to be doing, all those things are you know, as you build their relationship, they know what's expected of them. When you fire them, they should know, like, I knew this was coming. I haven't been holding my end of the bargain. And when I thought about it, I was like, that one is, because that holds you accountable as a leader too.
The onus goes put back on you.
Because it's like, okay, I failed you, and I'm relieving you of your duties of your livelihood because I wasn't able to communicate to you what I expected from you. And you have to be honest in your assessment of that too. And so, as I'm interviewing people, well, one thing I've gotten to learn is don't hire friends, don't hire family. That's a big thing, because and if you do, now I can be really honest.
Right.
I can be honest with my friends and family in the work setting, but I refuse to work with family. Like, it just doesn't work. But with friends, it's like either I know you well enough to know I can't work with you, or if you're my friend and you want to work with me, this is going to affect our friendship, and are you willing to jeopardize that? Because at some point, I'm probably going to fire you. And I learned that in sports. You know, as a GM, I feel like you should have that conversation with everybody, players, front office, whoever. Because this is the truth about sports. You know, father time is more prevalent in sports than any other sector, any other business. Because you know, most people are retiring at what? It's crazy now. It's too old, 65 and a half. But in sports, it's 35. It's getting lower and lower. You know, there's more and more turnover. But every GM should tell every player, like, hey, at some point I'm going to have to fire you or not re-sign you and move on. Like, that's just the world we live in,
Mm-hmm.
or telling your head coach, at some point, I am going to have to fire you.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen. I don't care if you win. Phil Jackson got fired a couple times. You know, he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. You know, so you need to have those conversations to set the baseline. Like, look, we're here to do a certain thing, and I want to help you be the best at what you do, and in turn, what you do in your human capital is going to help me be the best of who I am and the role I play in this, and then the whole organization we're going to raise the bottom of it. And if you have a high bottom, the sky's the limit.
Right.
Right.
Not everyone can handle those conversations, though. Like when I try to work with individuals or organizations that don't have a sports background, they don't have the same level of precision or expectation, and then I feel kind of crazy. I'm like, are we all just letting things what? We letting things slide? I'm like, I feel like woo. But it's something that, like, for example, I know when it's friend time and I know when it's business time. And I also don't take things personally on the business front. Friend side, I take everything personally, but business side, I don't. And it's something that is very unique to find. And it makes me think about at least the way the story is told of when you had to go to Miami and the way you handled that conversation. Like, you knew, I even have the notes. It's knowing your role and knowing your time. That's something that, did you know that innately? It was through over time understanding the politics of it all?
Yeah, I had a sense of the politics, you know, and when I played for the 2012 Olympic team, I knew my stature versus the other guys. Like, I knew certain guys would get a different type of treatment than I would get. And so I knew that I just had to have a different level of appreciation.
Right.
Like, I'm going to express to everyone, like, listen, I'm happy to be here, and I know my role, and I'm going to come to work ready every single day.
Did you feel that way right away? Was there any ego to it? Like, you know when to employ your ego in a classy way with receipts, and you also know when, like, it sucks, but it's not about my ego. Whereas maybe a younger player or a less emotionally mature player will make it a thing and make it to where if a return would be possible, it's no longer possible. Just like if you have to let somebody go, if the way they exit, I call it the autopsy of their exit, determines if there's ever an opportunity for us to work together again.
Right. That's a great point. So I just thought about this, and I'm always on younger guys about learning the business. Like, learn the business of your craft, of your work, because you are, first of all, you're in the 0.00001% of it all, and there's a you can't quantify the value you bring to this, because teachers obviously get underpaid, you know, but we understand the value there. But as athletes, for some reason, we have this high financial value applied to us because of how we make our communities feel. In saying that, we should learn the business of it. We should learn the psychology of it. We should learn everything about it. And I think that's why we say, like, Michael Jordan is one of the greats. You know, Kobe Bryant's one of the greats. LeBron James, one of the greats. You know, you can go on and on and on. We have our greats we always name. I don't think we include that characteristic of genius. We don't apply it to them, and they have it.
Right, they do.
It's like, what is it about them? I think they understand they have a responsibility and a duty to the talents that is very valuable for whatever reasons globally. And so I was always paying attention to the business of things. Like, why, if I'm making this much, how much is the person paying me making? When did they identify it was the right time to invest in this particular thing that I do? And so once you start peeling back layers, you should be learning all types of things, you know, like.
Should, though, right? These two things you said is you should be learning the business and having a sense of responsibility. What makes you have that innate sense of responsibility and reverence for the combination between talent and what you've earned versus players that are just acting out? I'm like, do you understand that people are looking up to you? Do you understand your responsibility to reach back out? there's a quote that says, you are personally responsible for making this society you grew up in better than what you grew up in, or however I'm paraphrasing it. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, you do, but then also like you don't. You can choose not to, but I like to be idyllic, and you do have a sense of responsibility. And how do you, again, speaking to your influence, you walk into a room and the rookie pays attention to you and the old head pays attention to you and the coach you speak, people listen. You've created that credibility. You leave the room, and we're lucky if some people retain what it is that you said, but what makes young athletes, I don't want to say, how could you get a young athlete to feel responsible?
I think it's a part of who they are. Some just don't get it.
Because I want to shake some of them sometimes.
So, right, but sometimes they just don't get it, and there's a myriad of reasons why they don't. You know, there's traumas, and sometimes we gotta talk about trauma. Enough trauma will get you, the right amount of trauma will help you be successful, but sometimes the trauma won't hold you back from getting to where you want to be, but it'll keep you from reaching your full potential, and that's part of reaching your full potential. It's just the psychology of it all as well, like having a proper understanding and the proper, like I said, reverence of, you know, your blessings. And sometimes whatever, like a lot of things just get in the way of that. And so I before I would criticize it, but now I look at it different. You know, I don't point a finger at a guy. I don't pass judgment on a guy, because I say, hey, he has his things that he just hasn't quite been able to overcome. Because I know for a fact there's some things that I'm still struggling with that I'm trying to overcome. It's just, you know, whatever the perception of society on whatever subject, you know, we all have our shortcomings. It's just your shortcomings are more on display than mine, because it's like your actions may seem louder, or you may have a different way of expressing it, which is, we call it acting out. Now, I do think there is some accountability that needs to be had. I try to hold myself accountable, but you know, it's how we grow up too. You know, you can't expect a 19-year-old kid to just flip the switch right away. And I've identified young guys who have a more universal cultural brain than I do. Like Jonathan Kuminga speaks like 9 languages.
Kuminga, that smile lights up an entire room, man.
I have to tell him all the time, like, do you understand your presence? Like when you smile, when you're in a good mood, everybody's in a good mood.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
I hope that lands for him. We were there, you guys were all at the hotel, and I was like walking out with all my bags, and from super far away, he was like serious, hoodie on. He caught my eye, waved all like goofy like a kid, and like everybody in the space just like lights up, and I'm like, so special.
But that's just, it's a part of, and he'll succeed. I'm not worried about him because he works hard. And I think that,
do you think being an immigrant makes him work harder?
That's a good question. I think the foreign players have a better sense of 2 things: fundamentals and work ethic. And to go back to your question, you know, sometimes you leave the room and people aren't able to retain what you said and put it into like their natural habits. I think sports specifically, we've gotten away from why we do it. I think that's been the crux of it all. It's like, why do you do what you do? And I'm hearing it more and more. It's like, I do this because first I wanted to be famous, and then second, I found the talent. It should be inverse. It should never be, I want to be famous, actually, because if you know you have a talent and you extract every ounce of talent out of yourself, fame is like, is inevitable. It will come. And I've learned the evils of fame. Like it actually becomes an inconvenience. You know, like how you're able to move. Like I'm naturally an outside person. Like I naturally like to sit in the sun. I naturally like to walk down the street. Like I take a lot of calls, like taking laps around my house, like, or the yard. Like I'll just do this, walking in circles over for like 30, 45 minutes. I was like, I felt like I would have more energy now than I did walking, however, 3 miles or however long I walked. But I'm not allowed that because of, you know, what my skill set and what my talent has placed me in society. And so we have to get back to, and I say the fundamentals of it all is, why do you do what you do? And so that's a tough thing because of social media and, you know, social relevance, teenagers are a lot different than they were when I was around.
I don't think I would survive with everything that's out. The way that I think, this would have been too much. This has been way too much stimulus. Like
Right, it's so much stimulus.
Oh,
like
man.
Black Mirror. One of my favorite Black Mirror episodes was the episode where your social status was based on your likes.
Yeah.
Or your ratings.
I could only get through the first season, and then I got too heebie-jeebie, uncomfortable, and like to this point of too much stimulus. I'm really curious, do teenagers now know, have they ever heard their own quiet internal thought, independent of any influence?
That's a good question.
Like, whoa, I was out in nature as a kid, right?
Mhm.
We school,
Mhm.
tennis practice, and then I was in the hills like collecting rocks and shit. and I spent a lot of time just in my own thoughts. My mom always makes the comment, anytime I looked at her, she was in the hammock reading, just quiet time.
Mhm.
Does that exist?
But I have a question. Because this new generation, we can't figure them out, but our parents or the generation before us were saying
Can't
the same
figure
things.
us out. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so you try to be optimistic. I'm naturally pessimistic, so I'm trying to become more optimistic.
Your pessimism makes me optimistic because I'm usually pessimistic. But if you get negative, I'm like, okay, I got to be positive. So thank you for that.
right. It's got to be yin and yang, right? And we understand that about the energy.
Right.
It's crazy. But they're saying that the younger generation, whatever generation they're calling them, they're a lot emotional than ever before. Like we were taught, like as men, we can't cry, be tough. They're more emotional before, and then they're seeing there are some benefits behind it. It's like, I'm not tied into a job. Like I don't have to be a worker bee.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gonna drift to wherever I want to be. Like I'm fine with that. And then in turn, that may change some laws. Like, all right, treat people with respect. Like stop trying to, extract people out of being like industrial workers, like the assembly lines.
Yeah.
Like don't treat us like that, or give us health care, or make sure we have the things that we absolutely need to survive as human beings, because there's a lot of other cultures or a lot of other countries internationally that are actually getting it right. I did hear something crazy, and I'm trying to figure out how to formalize it. But it's like one country, the way the healthcare is set up is based on life or death or cost.
Okay.
Right. So if you're going to lose your arm, and it's going to they weigh the cost factor in it. Like, do you absolutely need your arm? Like, if we don't take off your arm and you're going to die, if we have to save your arm because it might affect you actually living, if we have to save it and it costs us $3 million to save it, or we can just take it off for $20,000, because like the insurance is different. They'll just take off your arm because it's like it may affect your way of life, but you're still alive. So they just take off your arm. The way they explained it,
makes it really grateful.
I'm butchering the way I'm explaining it. But
no pun intended, taking off someone's arm.
It's crazy, right? Yes. No pun. No, I didn't mean unintended pun. But it made sense. I'm like, huh. And so now they're able to give everyone healthcare. Like everyone gets healthcare. Everyone. There's no one without healthcare there. And just the way they set up, so everyone's around.
Everyone has healthcare, but they all have one arm.
No, that's just that principle is applied to any health issue.
Sure.
So if it's a foot, or if it's like a cancer, or if it's like certain things, it's like, yes, you just have to do without that, but you still going about your way of life
in order to balance it out,
everything. Because yes, we are technically treating something, and you will be alive, because if we don't treat it, you will die. So we have to treat it. It's just the way we go about treating. Whereas over here, most things are cosmetics, and we're doing things that we spend more money. Like we have a skin cancer issue, but it's not to the level that it causes enough attention. But Botox is one of the top grossing products in healthcare.
Money is not the issue in the world. I just don't think money is the issue. Distribution of money and what we focus on, like you said. But I mean, we have enough resources to take care of everyone. But that's too idyllic.
Well, we're all, the foundation of it all is on greed. And then when I say that, it's just go back to shut up and dribble.
Right. But going back to your point about the younger generation being really sensitive, I don't know if you caught it. It was on Twitter. We'll not call it anything but Twitter for the record.
Right.
I'm just refused.
Mama called him Twitter. I'm gonna call him Twitter.
What's funny is Jack's mom follows me. on Twitter. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And she'll make comments of like, just want everyone know the grandmother of Twitter wants everyone following Mary back when it first started. I'm like, hell yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's a good story.
Her birthday is a day after mine. We're both Capricorns.
Okay.
So I saw something on Twitter where the younger, I don't know what to call it, either the generation that's maybe 5, 10, 15 years younger than me, they're posting videos of them being laid off. And this whole thing of them being laid off. And they're like the reaction to it. And I'm watching it. Everyone's like, yeah, good for them posting the videos of the layoff. And they're like arguing back with the HR. And maybe I'm old now because I ended up tweeting. I go, back when I was in tech, I was part of 2 or 3 major layoffs. And I didn't take it personal because business is business.
Right.
And I also know that if I'm a good rep, there's plenty of other tech companies that are going to hire me. So it didn't become this emotional thing. And some people were like, this isn't fair because of these other ways. And other people were like, yeah, that is the way you handle it. It's just business. And on one hand, I appreciate the sensitivity that they're getting, but then I'm also like, but also are we losing grit? Are we losing having a little bit thicker? Not everything is personal.
Right.
Like, come on. At the end of the day, we have a business to run. And this is probably very outdated. I will care about your feelings after 5 p.m. Like 9 to 5, I want us to execute on what we're executing on. And then you can tell me how you feel and I'll show up for you as a friend after 5 p.m. Man, does this piss off some people in my life.
Yeah, I don't know how to respond to it.
Or you can't.
If I can respond to it, but I can speak to the world that I come from. We're taught not to have feelings,
right?
So it's like we have no endorphins when it comes to like, it's like the chef who's used to, or you.
Am I opposite?
You pick up so many things, so many hot things that you just
yeah. I always make that joke.
You lose that.
I'll get away with murder, no prince.
Right, you lose your endings, your nerve endings, and you just that's just the athlete in general. But on a human level, it gets scary sometimes. I had a conversation with one of our partners, and it was just like, yo, we want to make sure the product's good. And I've had like really bad moments in game where I went deep and dark. Like, it's kind of scary when I look back on it. It was like a little embarrassing, but at the same time, it was just my human response because of how I felt in that moment. And it's funny how people tell you what you can and can't feel like you're speaking to.
Yeah.
Because of how much money you make, which makes me mad. It's like, oh, you make all this money, so you can't feel that way. It's like it's a business. But yes, it's a business, but a business can't be a business unless you have a level of competition on a court. And so yes, I do understand. Like, it should be all about the game. And when I feel like the business would get in the way of that, it turned my emotions. So now it wasn't like I'm not playing for the game. I'm playing for something else that the game should be like the benefits of how we play the game. And so I struggle with that a little bit. But I'm saying all that to say we have to numb ourselves so much. And then there's the midlife crisis once it's over, because now it's like, it all starts to come back once you remove yourself.
Yeah, you can't outrun the emotions. They eventually catch up.
Most guys are fine that first year out. And then right after about 10, 11, 12 months, it's like, all right, I got to do something. But then they start to normalize in terms of like being a human, because the sport's over. Like, once it's over, you can't go back. Father Time won. But so now you have to adjust to society, which is counterintuitive to everything that was a part of your success before. And people always wonder, like, what goes on? It happens in in marriages and divorce rates in athletes as well. It's like, somebody said it was 9 out of 10 now. I knew it was 7 out of 10. I'm like, 9 out of 10? I think it's like 80-something%. So it's close to, and that's a part of it too.
Yeah.
Like, just adjusting, like, now you start to get feelings back.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, I don't know what to do with these types of things. Now I'm like, you're a real person now. So you are a different person than what you were.
Yeah.
On both sides. And then you're in different, literally different arenas. You're not in the arena anymore. And so it's just adjusting to it all. It's just like, it's a crazy thing.
I think it's the importance of having good people around you. Like, you were speaking to times that you might go dark or might respond a certain way. I think what makes me effective across because I get asked, like, how do you work with such a diverse kind of people, like actors to athletes, different ages, different backgrounds. I don't know if you know this, but I worked in hospice as a volunteer as a teenager.
I didn't know that.
And always was volunteering, even in grade school, with at-risk youth or developmentally challenged children. Like, my empathy has always been really high.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, there are times when I'm not my best and I do react emotionally to things, but something I picked up very quickly is how to hold space for you as a client when you would go dark. I know you well enough to know that you need to say or do what you need to say or do. And I know not to say anything back and not to push. And then you usually come back around. And you come back around much stronger. And we can leave this or take it out. But there was one time when it was after a loss, and I'm always like precariously walking in the locker room, like, okay, make sure everyone has what they need. And you were short, and I could get that you were short. And I just didn't respond to what you said because I'm not going to take it personal.
Right.
I know where you're at. And like a couple hours later, you sent me a text. You're like, you did great. Thank you so much for your help. I was on some whatever, and then it's over. And it's the importance of having people around you like that, especially if you're someone who is your sensitivity is stunted, and then you become human for a second. And if someone's not okay with that, they'll like put that back on you. Right, how dare you be a human now? And it's the importance of having someone in your corner that's like, okay, got it. And then letting you work through that piece. And so that makes me curious about, you said it's 9 out of 10. It makes me curious about that 1 out of 10. Like, what does the 1 out of 10 do differently? Right. Are they balancing emotions and no emotions the whole time? Or is that partner be like, I'm in it for the long haul, and
I have access to a 1 out of 10. So and you know her well, so maybe she can explain it to you.
Might have her in the seat.
Yeah, and then I'm safeguarding as when I say that too. So
yeah. But it's the younger generation is very open with their sensitivities. And I'm curious to see if we'll course correct, because it seems that as a society we're one extreme to another extreme. But do we ever get to just meet in the middle, where maybe we'll do some Lord's work. We'll reach out to the sensitive kids. They'll teach us to be more in our emotions, and we'll teach them how to have a little bit of thick skin.
We've never been a equal rights society.
No shit.
Since the beginning of time. There's your answer. No one wants to say that. And I have a crazy idea for this is going to work. I wouldn't do it. A podcast based on guests coming in and telling us, just tell me your weaknesses. What's wrong with you?
Ooh.
So don't put this on. No, that part put on. This is, so how can I say this without getting in trouble?
I could talk to you about so many things because I appreciate the way your mind works, but I also want this time to be valuable for you.
You know what I'm trying to figure out?
I want you to be proud to share this.
You know what? It's funny, like the things I like talking about, I don't know if people want to hear.
I want to hear it.
That's where I struggle.
Like what?
I mean, anything that's beyond the surface level.
Yeah.
Because most folks want to hear about, like, I tend to try to stay as far away from being viral as possible. And that's what upsets me when like certain things go viral. Like I make a joke on something, like I made a joke on one of my teammates and like him not lifting weights. But the premise of it all was, this dude is so good and it's so wonderful to watch him that the only thing I can think of that's a weakness, because there isn't one, is that the only weakness is that we're allowed to foul him because he is so good and it makes it look so easy. So then I turned it into like, well, he don't want to lift weights because he can just get bigger and just throw people around because we just foul him because we can't stop him. That moment went so viral because it was
a soundbite.
It was so frustrating, and now I'm not able to express myself in the manner that I want to. And then eventually it comes to, do I want to do this at all? But I don't know if I'm getting good or bad feedback, but for most part, like people are saying, like, I enjoy what you bring in this space. So like,
which means people do want the depth. What I observe when I'm watching
but
the
is
podcast,
the depth valuable enough to give it the time that I give it?
If it's valuable to you,
Yes.
If it gives you joy, you've got to do, what I've learned about being in a creator space is everything I've done from Fat Fudge to even the agency that I've built with athletes is because I saw that it was missing and it gave me joy. And I was uniquely selected to provide that. And so I selfishly fill the gaps in the areas that I don't see being done. So if you're drawn towards depth, maybe it'll throw people off in the beginning. Maybe it won't be viral in the beginning. But if that's the place that you're meant to go, you just got to go there sooner.
No, for sure. And I don't
Be repetitive about it.
But I do understand that longevity beats virality.
When the roots are deep, there's no need to fear the wind.
Got bars. But how many people want to hear that?
We'll see if that little clip goes viral.
They all died off.
Show me, people. Show me.
Smart and scarcity are becoming synonymous. Or it's always been. No, it's becoming more synonymous. I feel like there were moments in time throughout human history where the popular people were the ones who had the most, the more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like their vernacular was more robust and it was lengthier, if that's even the word. Like, you know, like they were never at a loss of words.
Right.
They were able to, you know, there were never more adjectives.
Right.
There were never more expressions in their speech.
I love the human language.
Like all those things.
And now it's like, can you say it in a soundbite?
We dumbed it all down.
So there's Seth Godin, to me, is the GOAT of marketing. I was reading his book back in 2005-06, All Marketers Are Liars. I have something on my fridge by Seth Godin, and it is called Toward Dumber. And it's essentially saying it's the race to the bottom only if we allow it to be. Because whether or not you like it, you're a media company. And you can make something easy and quippy and digestible. And you can cut corners until someone else comes around and makes it even dumber and cuts more corners and keeps going and going and going. And it's like, but there's a different type of person who says, no, none of this, and continues to follow their gut instinct and build those roots. And that's the whole argument of it's only a race to the bottom if we let it be. So don't let it be.
But why are we doing what we do? Not you and I, because like we're able to live the lifestyles we live regardless of we don't have to dumb ourselves down. We're afforded that luxury.
You're afforded a little bit more than me.
It's a luxury that you don't have to dumb yourself down. Like, you went to Irwan. You went to Irwan, not me.
For you.
That was out of the kindness of your heart.
It was.
That was not a requirement for me to sit here.
Well, because I know your schedule. I'm like, he's probably not going to eat.
Yeah,
I can't have that on my watch.
Okay. But everything is geared toward margins, which is essentially the essence of capitalism. And so I was just speaking at one of these tech things, conferences. And I was speaking to how because, I invest in media properties, and sports teams, and I watch commercials in a different lens than ever before. I have a 6-year-old who loves commercials. Like, we'll laugh at commercials. But I look at commercials and I'm like, because at one point I was like, who's buying this? Like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. Who was buying this? And then I'm like, and then once I start peeling back the layers, I'm like, okay, there's 3 types of America. This is my wife giving me this information because she reads a book a day. You got your coast.
She listens to this podcast, by the way. She sends me notes on my episodes.
Nice.
I'm like, that makes me so happy.
You have your coast.
Yeah.
And there's a healthier lifestyle. Like, I got some friends in Georgia, Jody Meeks and his father. Came to Pebble Beach, we played golf, and he was like, man, it's beautiful. People just walking. People are exercising. They live in Georgia. It's just a different type of lifestyle. But you have your coast, and then you have your metropolitan cities, which is a different type of living as well. Like, you'll get your yoga studios. You'll get your certain lifestyles. And those are scarce in themselves.
Right.
Everything else is middle America. And you talk about how you advertise to someone, and you keep saying as a marketer, you just cut corners. That's how you get TV dinners. That's how you get the microwave. That's how you get the quick fix. That's how you get the meal in the little bag. That's how you get your 7-Eleven sells burritos frozen. That's how you go to that form. And I don't want to go at certain corporations, but that's how you get, everything's a margin now. And you were speaking to don't allow yourself to get there, but who's going to course correct for the greater good? Because essentially we are going to be, I think it was the one of those Pixar movies. The beginning was we're eventually going to be a society that sits down on the couch and consumes everything, and we're going to Apple Vision Pro is coming soon.
Yeah, it's not a joke, and it's
then
terrifying.
Your food's going to be delivered to you right there. You sit down, and then we're just going to eat ourselves to death. Wall-E.
It's terrifying. I was.
Why did that stick with me when I was watching that?
Right.
I wasn't old enough to comprehend all that, but I guess I was old enough to comprehend like.
Well, you got it. You got the vision, right?
That thing is coming soon.
Oh, dang. So that's why you need to have your depth in those types of conversations.
You smart.
Because, like you said earlier, you're sharing stuff with your brother, and then it's coming back to you.
True.
So you've got to be the one. If you're allotted the luxury and the privilege to be able to have those types of conversations, I think you should have those conversations. I don't cut corners, and my path has been very difficult. I could have cut corners and be in a very different position, but I wouldn't be true to myself. And I'm betting on it working out.
You were put on earth for us. We E.T. Evan Turner, my podcast co-host, and myself. We always talk about that. Like Dragan Petrovic died. He's one of the best basketball players from the old USSR that broke up, right? USSR broke up, right? Russia, USSR. Mm-hmm. And he died in a car crash. And at the funeral, his mother said, I hadn't been able to spend as much time with my son as I had liked to since he became a professional basketball player because everyone wanted his time. He was such a influential being. Like people just gravitated towards him, and he was pulled here, he was pulled there. And she said it used to hurt me at times, but it didn't take long for me to realize that he wasn't put on earth for me. He was put on earth for everybody else. And so I had to remind myself that sometimes, not that I'm here for that, but I would like to think, and I would feel like we should hold ourselves accountable. It's like that part, Dave Chappelle speaks on this. It's like those who move the needle in terms of getting us in the right direction, regardless of how we feel, that the truth needs to be told and accountability needs to be had. But there's an ego and there's a confidence behind that, as long as it's put out in the right way. And so we're always the one that's told to humble ourselves and not be brash and not be confident and like dumb ourselves down. And like that is mind-boggling to me too. Like the whole human experience is like,
I'm trying to reconcile that, because anyone that actually spends time with me knows I'm not bravado. I'm not in my ego. I just really give a damn about the things that I do, and I really give a damn about understanding things, which comes across as you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. And I'm like, damn, I swear to God, I'm not even trying to be that way, but I don't realize it, right? And so it's important to have people like you that be like, watch that.
Society does that to you too, because sometimes I'll tell you like, you fighting the wrong fight. Like, don't even give them.
I'm learning, yeah.
Don't give them your attention.
Yeah, I'm learning that.
They're gonna think you're just trying to be smarter than them. I'm not saying be humble. I'm just saying don't waste your time.
Right.
With that person.
That's something that I'm trying to learn.
Just don't waste your time. You're too smart for that.
And so it's being of service is the theme, right? It's you are put here for everybody else. Yes. And then it goes to the point of, I don't remember if we were recording or not earlier, but I want to bring it back to the difference between happiness and joy and having time for it. If you're in your purpose, to everyone else it'll look like you're working too much and not happy. But it's like, I don't understand that question. Just like you don't, like, what? Because we're in our purpose. And that's what brings me joy. And I desperately need the people around me that love me to understand that. Like I won't be able to show up for you in the ways that you expect because I'm in my purpose. And then I wonder, do you think everybody has a purpose?
Yeah, for sure.
And how do we get them to also find their purpose? So they stay out my phone about how I'm not around.
But it goes into, certain traumas have led them astray in their journey to find their purpose, because everyone has a skill set, everyone has a genius. I think everyone has a purpose, but society may not find that purpose valuable, and then that's how we trick ourselves into doing things we don't like. And then I'm like, there's so many successful people in the eyes of public sentiment that are miserable.
100%.
I always say that. It's like there are people who have a lot more money than I do and are miserable. Like I'm a lot more happy than they are.
Yeah.
Or more joyful than they are.
Joyful.
But there's a lot more people that don't have as much money than me that are more joyful and happier than I am.
Yeah. I
And
had a female client for a period of time when I first started, and she is insanely successful. And we were having a session at our house, and out of nowhere, she started tripping and she started yelling at me, full bars yelling. And I've only been yelled at a few times in my life like that. And I knew it was nothing personal, but her words were, I don't understand why you're so happy. I am successful and I have all the money in the world and you have nothing, Mary, and you're so happy. And I looked at her, I was like, we should talk about that some more. Like, not even upset with her, like, yo, what is going on here? Where she was chasing achievement to cover up some sort of trauma or some sort of I don't feel good enoughness. And it's wild. And so at the end of the day, which actually it's more of when I'm on a plane, I think flying's not natural. It'll never be, especially now with walls opening up and doors opening up. But I'm terrified of flying, and I just assume every flight's my last flight on this earth.
And I'm about to get on a plane.
And I there was one flight where the turbulence was so bad, and I looked around. I'm like, okay, there's a priest on this plane. There's 2 newborns. God wouldn't do that. He wouldn't take us all down. Like, I don't like flying. And so what I do to calm my nerves on a plane, as I say, if today is the last day, am I content with the kind of woman I've been and the life that I've led? And if the answer is yes, I feel very calm because I feel like I've lived in my purpose, even if I don't have necessarily the achievements on paper. So you said people are successful in the eyes of society and yet they're miserable. And I think people need to somehow find a way to be of service in their own community, not society. If you go into your own backyard and you double down on the thing that you're innately passionate about, don't spread yourself out or a bunch of different causes. Pick a cause in your own backyard. You will find purpose, responsibility, and joy, and you will be that mustard seed that moves mountains in places you'll never be able to even see.
You've been in the Word, huh? But it goes back to, I love how we're tying it back to the principles that we apply to certain things. And it goes back to, why do you do what you do? And even if you don't love something, if you are reaping the benefits of the labor you put into something, even if you don't love it, I always say there's a duty and a responsibility to it. And I always speak to, how we define our greats. It's beyond the stats. It's beyond, how they make us feel. Well, part of the way they make us feel is because the duty they understand that comes with it, the responsibility that comes with it. And that, you're supposed to give back in some manner. It can be it's so many different forms in giving back and taking care of the space that afforded you, the situation you live in. So that person that, reacted towards you that way, there's a lot of shortcomings that she hasn't been made aware of. It's like, if she would have just given back, a part of giving back was just, being respectful towards you or understanding like, hey, this person is here for a reason. She might unlock something in me. Let me try to tap into that. And so I don't know where that came from. Maybe it came in reading. Maybe it came from, seeing teammates that couldn't read. Maybe it came from, people telling me I wasn't going to amount to anything. Just that EQ, there are some amazing qualities and unlocks that are there in the world of capitalism. So it's just all interesting.
Why do you do what you do?
There's a reason. I have a reason. I have my reason. Like, I work hard for a reason. Like, there's an end goal. There's an end game.
There is an end game, because I thought you were just going to work to the bone, to the end.
It may not come to fruition until, my son might be the one leading that. Like, I understand that.
Yeah.
It's going to take us a while to get to where I want to go. But I am afraid to speak to it because...
let it be a gift to yourself.
Society doesn't want us to get there.
Yeah, okay.
Or the powers that be. I shouldn't say society.
The powers that be. Yeah. Well, to close it out, Andre, something that you... a lot for me that I appreciate, I think that maybe you're not aware of your purpose, is... in the way that you move, in the way that you show up, you make me feel even more capable. And I'm someone who prides herself in feeling like I get the job done. And in some way you co-sign that just by the way that you move. Like, you're a role model in many ways and an exceptional friend. And you have given me unless I become a mother, the top experience of my life with that championship. And I really, really appreciate that trust with someone who is incredibly selective with who they let into their circle.
Thank you. Thank you. And you are the Mr. Miyagi. Hopefully it's not a backhanded compliment. You are the Mr. Miyagi of who you are. And I'm always looking to surround myself with people who can help me peel back layers and get more in depth in whatever it is that can help me bring out the best of myself. And so you are. Is there someone else is better?
Better? No, if
like
you
Mr. Miyagi, like
if,
you
if
understand.
you think he's dope, then that's the highest compliment, right? If you think Mr. Miyagi's mid and you tell me that, then Mr.
Miyagi was like, he could solve for anything. He was just like, he experienced joy every day. I saw it in him. He was like, man, go wash the car and do it right. And there's a form to it. And this form leads to something else, but you just got to see the end game. And that's what I'm trying to teach a lot of athletes. Like, hey, sometimes you got to go into things with blind faith. That's what I wanted to speak to today. Like, I don't know where that came from. That's just
I've heard you say it a few times. Beyond reasonable doubt.
Right. Like, I don't know why I just dove into this because I really didn't know the end game, but I knew I was a curious person. I've always been curious. That's part of my playfulness, like just super curious. Like, let me go check this out.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm masking curiosity because it was frowned upon to be smart where I come from. You're a nerd. Like, who would have thunk? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But the curiosity leads to blind faith, and then you just go down a rabbit hole and you're like, whoa, look what I found. It's like that meme you see where somebody's digging and they stop. And somebody else came in and just dug. It was right there.
Yes,
keep going.
Yes.
And so that's a part of it. And I feel like that was Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah.
He was always like, I found joy in life. And, I find joy in mundane things. Like, like I worked at a car wash when I was a kid. Athletes don't have regular jobs. and especially the new generation. Like, go get regular jobs, kids.
It's important.
Because when you go get a regular job, you form appreciation for earning like a paycheck. And like now you know what it's like to be in the real world. Like minimum wage when I was growing up was $5.15. I was just trying to get one pair of shoes.
But then the way you treat people around you is also in its own class. The number of people, once I found out I was working with you, be like, oh, I ran into him in the elevator once. Man, he's so respectful, held the door open. The way you talk to people around you is you have an appreciation for it. Not like, oh, I want to be humble, like I wash cars. Like, no, you understand the people. You understand where you came from. You understand what couldn't be. And there's massive appreciation for that. Blind faith to me is about how you can do everything right and it could still not work out.
Right.
But if you give up, the L is guaranteed.
For sure.
So just take it as far as you can possibly take it.
For sure.
Is it silly to ask people where they can find you? Am I naive to think that everyone, like, does anyone not know?
People find me. People will find my email.
On social media.
People will find my email. I got to change the way I formulate my emails because they're
They'll be cryptic,
they're similar. So people just type in something and then they just know the what do you call it? The foundation of all the emails, whatever it is for the company.
Yeah.
They find me.
No, I mean on social. Your podcast, Point Forward Podcast.
Yeah.
The Sixth Man book. I definitely recommend everybody read it or listen to it if that's your stage. And you're Andre on the platforms. I don't know how you got that.
Just walking into headquarters and seeing like, hey, y'all want to do something cool? All right, let's hang out. And by the way, it'd be cool if I had this name and ain't nobody using it. There's a if you bring value to somebody, then you can usually get what you want, but it's not going in trying to get something.
No.
It's just like, hey, let's add value to each other.
You're a value first person, but also I will speak to this real quick. You having those handles on social media speaks to how into tech you were, right? You're an early adopter. You're jumping in there, having these conversations. So of course you'd get just your first name on a social media platform.
Well, that's just thinking long term.
You are smart.
We always
you
think
are
instant
kind.
gratification.
And that is it on today's episode. Thanks so much for hanging out. Your time and attention never goes unappreciated. If anything in today's show stood out to you, I encourage you to share it to social and tag me. That is how you can help a little independent show like mine grow. And of course, rate, review, and subscribe to Eat, Play, Crush wherever it is you get your podcasts. If you want to follow me, I'm at Paleo Chef on social media or the show at Eat, Play, Crush. You want to stay in touch via my newsletter or get your hands on the gut reset, visit eatplaycrush.com. And until next time, be well, do good, and trust your gut.